Hi, my name is Susan Burkholder. I am a member of the Combat Human Trafficking Rotary Club that for right now is a satellite club of Fair Oaks Ranch Rotary. We are going to provide today a recording of our presentation that explains what it is that our Combat Human Trafficking Club is going to do throughout District 5840 and beyond. Because this is a recording, we're not going to be there to answer questions at the end. So if you have questions, please send an email to the chairperson of our club, Jo Anne Browne. Her email address is there, and my email address is also there. So if you have any questions at all after this presentation, please reach out to us and we will get back with you with an answer to your question. So the Combat Human Trafficking Rotary Club that is in District 5840 was formed by like-minded individuals to combat human trafficking within our district and beyond. We have 4 areas that we will focus on as a club. One is to educate people so as to reduce the demand for human trafficking products, increase awareness about the issue of human trafficking, establish supportive options for vulnerable individuals so they are less likely to become victims of human trafficking. And then my favorite, work to empower youth with information about the risks to themselves and others of becoming victims to human trafficking. So our presentation today will be somewhat of a mini version of a basic, here's an introduction to human trafficking presentation. Most of the clubs in our district have had human trafficking presentations over the past several years, but we're going to give you guys just a little bit of an overview and dispel a few myths, and then I will explain to you what it is that this club will be doing, and then what other clubs in our district and individual Rotarians can do. So we'll start our presentation here. There is a federal law in the United States called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. It's called TVPA for short. According to TVPA, a human trafficking victim is a person induced to perform labor or a commercial sex act through force, fraud, or coercion. So in a courtroom, one of those 3 things would have to be proven: force, fraud, or coercion. However, according to TVPA, anytime a minor is involved in any aspect of the commercial sex industry, that minor is automatically considered to be a victim of human trafficking. The legal requirement is by any means. There is no need to prove force, fraud, or coercion when a minor is involved in the commercial sex industry. For example, in a courtroom, if the defense says, well, yeah, she's only 15 years old, but that's how she and her 28-year-old boyfriend made money. She was completely willing to do this. No, according to TVPA, if that's a minor, she was involved in the commercial sex industry, she's automatically considered to be a victim of human trafficking. So in the United States, sex trafficking can involve several different things. It's not just the concept that we think of as prostitution, exchanging sex for money. That certainly is a version of sex trafficking, as is pornography and any sexually oriented business. Basically, any sex act in exchange for anything of value, whether that is online or in person, would be considered sex trafficking. If it involves an adult, there has to be the component of force, fraud, or coercion. But if it involves a minor, there's no need to prove force, fraud, or coercion. So pornography, sexually oriented businesses, or anytime a person is exchanging sex, online or in person, for something of value, that's human trafficking. That's sex trafficking. We're going to watch a video that explains how sex trafficking began for a young lady who goes by the name of Lacey.
Do you know Lacey? She was born in your town about 15 years ago. She lives in your neighborhood. She goes to your school. She's in your youth group.
I went to a private Christian school. Wednesdays I went to youth group from 7 to 9:30.
The day before her 13th birthday, a young boy known as a spotter approached Lacey in public. He invited her to her first party.
We were like, okay, well, we're going into 8th grade. We might as well get our first party out, you know, like, let's just go have fun.
That night would change Lacey's life forever.
I was sitting on the couch just listening to music. My friends were off dancing and stuff, and some really cute guy comes up and starts talking to me. And he was like, okay, well, maybe I'll see you around.
He made sure they ran into each other.
I was at Starbucks ordering a drink, and he had said, you know, hey, do you remember me? And I was like, nope, sorry, nope, don't remember you. And he's like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure I remember you.
He continued to stalk Lacey, learning her routine and approaching her multiple times in public places.
I went up to the Safeway, and we were buying groceries because my mom was at work, and I seen him there too.
Lacey had no idea these encounters were intentional. She thought it was fate, so she agreed to get together with him.
We started going on like little dates, fake dates. You know, I started thinking, you know, he really did like me.
This dating period was used to gain Lacey's trust.
What I'd do is I would go to school on the bus, and then right when I got off the bus, I'd kind of just leave and go meet him down the street or something.
Lacey continued to see her stalker, and he slowly began to manipulate her more and more.
He bought me a dress, and it was like really special to me. It was like I felt like I was like a princess, like the queen or something. And he used to call me his queen.
Stop, go are the only signs she knows. She's trapped.
He kept saying that he needed money, and he was gonna lose his cars and his house and stuff, and he's not gonna have anywhere to go. So I was like, you know, I'll help you or whatever. And so we went to the strip club.
She had no idea that helping him meant he would rent her body out to lustful men of all ages, from all walks of life, night after night. But Lacey's boyfriend groomed and manipulated her. He changed her name, her clothing, the way she felt about herself. He forced her into doing horrible, unthinkable things.
That night, my first night, I got in the car with 3 people. I puked for about 30 minutes. And I don't know, I just couldn't stop crying.
Often Lacey was forced to have sex with 10 different men in one night, 6 nights a week.
After a while, you kind of get used to it, like everything that goes around, it just doesn't seem out of ordinary to you because you've been around it for a while.
So that's Lacey's story, but our Combat Human Trafficking Club is not only going to focus on sex trafficking and combating that. We will also be raising awareness and talking about labor trafficking. In the United States, labor trafficking can be agriculture, ranching, landscape crews, domestic household servitude, restaurant, bars, motels, hotels, and sometimes even traveling sales or peddling sales crews, like maybe someone who is coming up to you in the Walmart parking lot to sell you a music CD. It is possible that that person is the victim of labor trafficking. They have been manipulated through force, fraud, or coercion into selling those CDs in the Walmart parking lot, thinking it's going to be their way to get in a big band when actually they're just being used to sell those CDs. So some examples of what labor trafficking might look like in the United States, these 3 photographs. The photograph of the woman in the field of agriculture, she could be a victim of labor trafficking in the United States, or the young man there washing dishes in the kitchen in some sort of a hospitality environment, he could be a victim of labor trafficking. Or that photo of that, what looks like a sweatshop where they're making clothing. That doesn't only happen in other countries, that can be happening in the United States. And if any of these individuals was pulled into doing that labor through force, fraud, or coercion and is not being properly paid, then that's labor trafficking in the United States. We'll watch another quick little video to illustrate this a little bit better for you. Takes a minute to load.
Hi, good morning.
Oh, hi, come on in. If you need anything, we'll be in the other room.
Thank you.
This should have been done already. You're so careless and clumsy. Can't you remember?
What the hell is going
Bahala ka na ba sa trabaho na to? I've got a feeling. Ano nga ang pangalan? O yan, tikman mo yan. Para sa'yo.
Gusto ka na? Ako nga pala si Randy, no? Excited ka?
Head southeast on West Harbor Drive toward
What took you so long to get inside?
Malaki na. Ako na muna magtatay. Honey?
This is your room and this is your bed. Just be grateful you're not sleeping on the dirt.
This can't just go around like this.
Have to restart my presentation a little bit to get that to stop. So that's an example of labor trafficking here in the United States. The University of Texas, a few years back, did a study trying to get our heads wrapped around how prevalent is human trafficking here in Texas. The study took 2 years to complete. It was involved a lot of different entities, non-government agencies, government agencies, law enforcement, et cetera, throughout the state of Texas. And I want to make it very clear that this number I'm about to give you is an estimate. It is not possible to go around and count the actual number of people who are victims of human trafficking because so much of it is never seen or might be seen, but is not reported. So this is an estimate. Estimate from the University of Texas study shows that on any given day in Texas, it is estimated that there are approximately 313,000 victims of human trafficking. Of those, it is estimated that there are approximately 79,000 minors and young adults who are victims of sex trafficking. Now, I want to make it clear that that estimate of 79,000, that is not all minors. That is 23 and under, male and female, 23 and under, who are victims of sex trafficking in the United States. A couple of nuances about these numbers that I want us to all understand. Of that 79,000, the vast majority of them, far greater than 90%, are United States citizens. So often people think that in the United States, sex trafficking has something to do with someone from another country, and that is false. Most sex trafficking victims in the United States are United States citizens, at least the younger ones, the minors and the young adults. However, if you do the math there on the screen, you see that it is estimated that there are 234,000 victims of labor trafficking in the United States. And just like you saw in that video, most of those labor trafficking victims are from another country. However, most of them came here legally or thought they came here legally, and then things went wrong. Their documents were taken away from them, as you saw in the video, or they were used, force, fraud, or coercion was used to pull them into the world of labor trafficking. I want to make it very clear to everyone that in Texas, labor trafficking is more prevalent than sex trafficking. That is also true in the United States, and that is true worldwide. A lot of people think that sex trafficking is more prevalent. It is not. It gets a lot more coverage in the media, et cetera, but labor trafficking is something we cannot ignore in Texas or in our country or in other countries. We have to be aware of the reality of that. Another reality that I want to make sure we are all understanding is that sex trafficking is not just something that happens to girls. I work with a nonprofit in the San Antonio area that works with survivors of sex trafficking. At that organization called Ransomed Life, we work with both girls and boys who are survivors of sex trafficking. In the presentations that I do for Ransomed Life, I often co-present with a member of the San Antonio Sexual Exploitation Task Force. It is a gentleman who works for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, former FBI special agent. According to that special agent, that FBI special agent, of the cases the task force in San Antonio works related to sexual exploitation of children, 50% of those cases are boys, half and half, not 1%, not 20%. This happens as much to boys as it does to girls. Another nuance that I want to point out, oftentimes when I'm doing this presentation and talking to people in Bernie or Fair Oaks or Junction or Kerrville or Ingram, any of those hill country towns, they insist that, Susan, this happens in San Antonio. We understand that, but this doesn't happen in Bulverde, where I live, or this doesn't happen in Mason or Castroville. That is false. This statistic here of 6,374 ads for escorts, a friend of mine, his name is Chuck. He also works to combat human trafficking in our area. On one day, he went onto the dark web and pulled up all of these small towns and counted the number of ads for escorts in all of those small towns combined. 6,374 ads on one day for escorts. Statistically, most escorts are not adults. They are not adults who are choosing to be in that business. They are minors who are victims of human trafficking in all of those small areas. And labor trafficking, people are like, yeah, I don't think labor trafficking happens near me. Yes, it does. There was a case a few years back of the Dominion Country Club off of I-10, just south of Bernie, where two women were held as maids and were not paid, and their working conditions were abhorrent in a high-end Dominion Country Club home. Burnett County, that's within our district. There's was a children's home there. This couple that are depicted there on the screen owned that place. It was called Joshua Home in Burnett County. They had kids who were part of the foster care system who needed to be placed somewhere. They were placed at Joshua Home, and that couple forced them into labor trafficking in a business that they ran there at Joshua Home, forced those kids into working in their business there on their property. In Dalhart, Texas, very recently up in the Panhandle, there is a current ongoing case of a potato field operation that is using enslaved people to harvest their potatoes in the Panhandle. That's an ongoing case. Recently in Katy, Texas, there was a situation of a woman who was being held against her will to be a nanny to a family's children. So labor trafficking and sex trafficking happen throughout our district, throughout Texas, and throughout the United States. One more nuance I want to point out to all of you. So many people have it in their heads that child sex trafficking has something to do with a white panel van pulling up in the Walmart parking lot and snatching your young person when they're not looking and driving them away in that van and selling them to somebody for $3,000 or shipping them off to another country. That is a myth. That does not happen related to sex trafficking. There are rare occasions in the United States when a young person is abducted by a stranger. It does happen. It's very rare, but it does happen. But when that happens, it doesn't have anything to do with the commercial sex trafficking of a minor. That's a different kind of crime when a terrible human being grabs a young person and kidnaps them and does terrible things to them. That is not human trafficking. That is not child sex trafficking. The reality is that most of the young people who get pulled into the world of commercial sex trafficking go willingly with someone they know, or they think they know, or they think they can trust. With the organization I work with in San Antonio, none of the young people we have ever worked with were ever snatched, kidnapped, taken, or abducted. We have to be very clear when we're teaching our young people and the population that we're going to be informing about this issue, that this isn't about stranger danger. We need to make sure we're talking about the reality. And another little nuance, in the video you just watched of Lacey, to make money for her boyfriend, she went to the strip club and then had sex with those 3 people for money. Lacey went home that night. She had breakfast with her mom the next morning. Lacey's mom worked full-time as a nurse. She worked nights, and Lacey's dad was deployed at the time. So Lacey was a victim of child sex trafficking, but she wasn't missing. And that's rather common, more common than most people think. All right, so that's just a little tiny bit of human trafficking 101 for all of us. What exactly will this Combat Human Trafficking Rotary Club in our district do? As I mentioned in the beginning, one, we will promote and practice ethical consumerism by actively educating buyers of commercial sex trafficking and people who are buying labor trafficking products. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. We will raise awareness by partnering with local Rotary clubs. That's all of you in District 5840, all the Rotary clubs, or as many of you as want to participate, to host presentations in your community for the general community, for parents, for school staff. We'll walk alongside you with that. I want to make it clear that our club will not be doing presentations for parents or school staff. We will partner with organizations in each area that do those presentations and bring them in to be the educators for our community, parents, and school staff. We will research opportunities to provide resources, training, and advocacy for vulnerable individuals. You know what, as Rotarians, we all already do that. Almost all Rotary clubs have projects and service things related to vulnerable populations. We're just going to be very intentional about thinking through how we are helping them not get caught up into human trafficking by raising them up and supporting them. And then fourth, my favorite, empowering youth with knowledge. We will partner with local Rotary and Interact clubs to host presentations for area youth, whether that's in a school or with clubs, with the Interact club in the school system, or just general teens in an area. So those are the four things our club will be doing. What can your Rotary club do? These are just some suggestions you might want to consider. One, perhaps designate an anti-human trafficking champion within your Rotary club. Our Rotary club will train them on things that your club can do, and that can be your anti-human trafficking champion who heads up projects with your club to combat human trafficking. Host presentations, as I've already mentioned, for local community, parents, and schools, and our club will help you to organize those and make that happen. Host presentations to empower students with knowledge, and then, as you already do, research opportunities to support vulnerable populations. And then what can each individual Rotarian, what can each of us do? First, I'd highly recommend that if you have not completed a full human trafficking presentation, if you haven't watched at least like an hour-long presentation or information session on what exactly human trafficking is, then I suggest that you might want to do that. Today's presentation was just a snippet of information. There's much more to understand. And at the end of this presentation today, I'll give you some ideas about how to do that. You all might want to consider joining the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery. You can find out more at ragas.online, ragas.online. That is an international group of people who are working together to combat human trafficking. You might want to join them. And then learn what and how to report. The Texas Attorney General's office created a video called Be the One. You might want to go online and watch that. It very specifically helps individuals understand how and when to report. If you see something, say something. If you see something, you will want to contact your local law enforcement, and you should call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 888-3737-888. I know that's not how we write phone numbers in the United States, but it sure is easy to remember, 888-3737-888. I actually have that phone number in my phone. I have called it on one occasion when I saw something that looked very suspicious to me. So if you see something that doesn't look right to you, don't try and figure it out unless you're a trained human trafficking detective. Just call it in and let law enforcement figure out what's going on. What else can you do? Ethical consumerism. The photograph there on the screen is of a young boy on the Ivory Coast of Africa. He has a bag of cocoa beans or cacao beans. They're a little bit smaller than a football, a little bit bigger than a baseball, each bean from which we get our chocolate. That child is a slave. He is not paid. It's not even child labor. It's literally that young boy is on a slave plantation in Africa so that we can have cheap chocolate. I would ask each of us one simple thing you can do every Rotarian can do this. Commit to buying only slave-free chocolate. You can learn more at slavefreechocolate.org. A friend of mine named Simon John, he is the RAGAS board secretary, Rotary Action Group Against Slavery secretary. Simon gave me this information. The University of Chicago found that 1.56 million children were harvesting cocoa during the 2019 growing season. Folks, we have between 1.2 and 1.4 Rotarians internationally. More people than that, more children than that. 1.56 million children are enslaved to bring us cheap chocolate. How cool would it be if all 1.2, 1.4 million Rotarians committed to not buying slave chocolate? And then on your own, research other ways to decrease your consumption of slave products. So that is everything that I have for all of you. Remember that if you have any questions or you want some ideas for a project or want to work with the Combat Human Trafficking Rotary Club to implement things together, reach out to Jo Anne Browne. There's her email address, or myself, Susan Burkholder. We're happy to help answer any questions or help you in any way. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I want to bring up a handout that we can send out to you. So give me a second to stop sharing my screen, and then let me share my screen again and show you this handout. Just make that bigger. Sorry, give me a sec. Well, it didn't want to do that. All right, so this is a handout that our club created. We are happy to send that out. Just send an email to Jo Anne Browne or myself, and we will send this handout to each of you or to your club. It basically talks through everything we talked about in our presentation today, what the Combat Human Trafficking Club will do, what your club can do, and what individual Rotarians can do. And then on the back are resources. There is the RAGAS online connection, a couple different ways to watch human trafficking presentations at A21, Ransomed Life, Shared Hope, Polaris Project, etc. There are links to Slave-Free Chocolate, Fair Trade America. There's a link there to watch the Texas Attorney General's Be the One video. And then here are 4 apps you can actually put on your phone to help you practice ethical consumerism. If you want this handout, Jo Anne or myself can send that to you. And that is everything that I have for you all today. Thank you for letting us come and talk with you, at least via a recording, and we look forward to hearing from each of you. Thank you.